What's going on, guys? So the things you see on this table are a bit different from the typical laptop and smartphone videos that you see on the channel. And I do want to preface this video at the beginning by saying that TerraMaster did send me this NAS unit that I'm going to showcase here. However, they aren't giving me any sort of monetary, transaction for this video. They also have no idea when this video is going to be posted. And all my opinions and thoughts are my own. And I kind of have the freedom to say whatever I want. And with that, I guess I can switch up the sponsor segue by saying that this video is sponsored by nobody. Technically TerraMaster though. All right, so this is a NAS by TerraMaster. As you can see here, it's the branding on the left. I have never used a NAS before, and I'm not going to come across as any sort of NAS expert. I'll try to explain things the best way I can and the setup that I'm going to use. What you see over here is going to be reserved for a future video. This is a 10 gig capable NAS, and currently my LAN network isn't configured to work with 10 gig. I'm really going to showcase this here, but give you guys a bit of a foreshadowing on what to expect on the channel. So if you are interested to see me upgrade my 1 gig LAN to 10 gig, check out my subscribe button down below. That sounded so corny, but whatever. So this is a 4-bay NAS solution by TerraMaster. This is the F4-424 Max model. We do have light indicators here to see which bays are populated, and then the power as well. Moving over to the back, we do have a power button to power the device, obviously. An HDMI port if you want this to double as like your small PC, because I'll get into the specs in a second, or as your dedicated home server or home streaming device. We also have two 10 gig ports, which I would say is pretty nice at this price point. I'm also going to open this up as well so you guys can see the upgradability path for what you can do inside of here. And kind of touching on the specs a bit, so this does have an Alder Lake chip. So in terms of the transcoding with Intel, it's an i5-1235U processor. So for those of you who are using Jellyfin, Plex, or any type of streaming service locally that you're doing, you're gonna have most of the transcoding capabilities with that Alder Lake chip. So once you remove those screws, you can actually slide this top part off, and it comes off like so. As you can see here, we are running DDR5 memory, and we have 2 slots of SODIMM RAM, and then we also have 2 slots to populate our NVMe drives. So that's what I'm going to do right now. TerraMaster also gives you these stickers in the box, so you can actually label your hard drives as you see fit on the front bay. And I'll get into my configuration in a second, but let's go ahead and upgrade the memory. Now I do have a bunch of spare parts lying around, and I used to do a lot of like PC videos back in the day, but obviously a lot of people didn't watch them. If you guys want me to do more of this type of video and others, please let me know down in the comments below. But just looking at some of the spare stuff we have here, I do have DDR5 memory. This is a 32 gig stick, and then this is also another DDR5 32 gig stick. So I'm going to populate that. And I just push down there, and I just push down there. So now I have 64 gigabyte of memory. And then when it comes to the SSDs, I'm probably just gonna have 2 1 terabyte NVMe drives. I don't think I need to go crazy here. So my NVMEs are installed, my new RAM is installed, so I'm gonna go ahead and slide this back on. I have 2 18 terabyte Iron Wolf Pro drives by Seagate. By the way, I bought all these myself. These are recertified products, but I do think they are going to hold up pretty well because 18 terabytes of brand new is pretty pricey. So I have 2 of these, and these are going to act as like my cold solution archiving stuff where it's going to have a lot of my videos. And then I have 2 terabyte each SSDs, and this is going to be more of my warm storage. And then the NVMe drives that I have here are going to be like my very hot or very fast storage. So it's going to be more like what you do in the cloud where you have like a cold, warm, and hot solution just locally. So hopefully this all works out as intended. Once again, this is my first time doing this. So let's just go ahead and install these. In order to open these drives here, I do like their solution. You just kind of push that out and you pull, and the drive comes out. And when it comes to SSDs, they also give you some screws in the bag. I'm not gonna waste your guys' time, so I'm gonna go ahead and screw in these 2 SSDs. By the way, if you are installing SSDs, you're gonna have to remove the side cover for when you want to use mechanical drives, just so you can get the screw hole to line up when you want to screw in your SSDs. All right, so both of my SSDs are installed. So I'm actually going to do this on the overhead. So it's a lot easier to see what's actually going on here. So you see the connectors are in there. And what I'm going to do is just kind of slide it in there, push in, and that's it. Just like that. The drives are installed. Now the next two, I'm going to do the mechanical hard drives. So all you have to do is kind of just set it inside there. And then you take the side parts of here and you just kind of pop them in. All right, and now for the drives, I will just slide them in. And I will push. All my drives are installed. It's definitely a lot heavier than before. And now we're going to power it. So they do provide you a power cable. You also want to make sure that you plug this into your router or a switch. That way it's able to get an IP address. All right, so if this is your first time setting up TerraMaster, what I highly recommend doing is if you have a router that tells you the IP address of new devices, you can just type in the IP here. If you don't have access to that, you can go to their support page. I'll have this link down in the description below. You want to select the 4 drives or how many drives you have for your model. Click the one that you have. This is the F4-424 Max. You want to install the NAS for PC for your operating system. I'm on macOS using the Apple Silicon, so I download the Apple chip. Once you hit that refresh button, it's going to say uninitialize. You want to click this login button or double click your NAS here and actually bring you to this page. Once again, if you know your IP of your device, you can just copy it and it'll still take you to this page. So right now it's attempting to do an automatic initialization. I would argue if you really don't know what you're doing here, you probably should leave this alone. My recommendation is to actually unplug your drives and have them be installed in the NVMe if that's what you have installed first. I'm actually going to hit escape because I want to do the online configuration myself. So it's downloading the bootloader right now. And as you can see here, these are my drives. I'm actually going to push in the newer ones. And as you can see, after I, pushed in my drives, they're going to populate here. So my SSDs showed up pretty quick for obvious reasons because they are SSDs. The hard drives are taking some time because they're spinning up, but you'll see here that now they're showing up. These are the Seagate drives. Obviously, they're not the full, 2 terabytes that I have from the SSD and 18 terabytes that I have for each drive. Some stuff is allocated for different parts of the storage, but what I want to have the disk installed on are the NVMEs. Both of them is fine. And then for the TOS package, I'm also going to do the online download since I'm already hooked up to the internet. All right, so TOS is being installed. It says it can take up to 10 minutes. Don't think it's going to take that long, as you can see from how fast this is going up. So it's doing the 5-minute countdown. Once it's done, it's going to reload the page. If you are impatient, like me, you can actually just refresh the app and see when it populates, and you can just go ahead and hit login. So we are at 3 minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the refresh button, see if it shows up. It does say not configured. So what I'm going to do now is just hit this login button, and you'll see that this is the TO6 software. So I'm going to go ahead and hit confirm. And then you can name it what you want. This is a super user. So I'm actually just going to type in my name and that should be okay. I'm going to skip the email verification because I don't think it's too important for now. All right, so now we're at the point where we can configure our storage pool and volumes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit confirm. So it's taking me directly to the volume page. Might take a second here. I'm going to hit create. I'm going to create actually, let's drop out of this real quick. Let's look at the storage, and it looks like there is a T-RAID configuration. Don't think I asked for it to do that. My outfit did change because I had to wait for my 18 terabyte drives to synchronize and be in a proper RAID configuration, as well as the SSDs as well. Setting up the hypercache and just, seeing the capabilities of what the TerraMaster is. I have my likes and dislikes, which I will get into in a second, but I think what most people care about is how fast are my speeds transferring from my laptop over to the NAS. Now, I am connected with a 5 gig adapter. I will have this link down in the description below. So I find the best way to connect this to the computer that you're using, this is Mac for example, is to actually use the TerraMaster app, and then you want to log in and then click on network disk, and then it tells you which drive you want to select, hit OK, and then it's there. You can just go to the network setting over here and you can see it, but I just like going through the TerraMaster interface, really no difference. So my example here, I'm going to transfer over a nearly 11 gig file. It's a previous video that I recorded. It's the Pixel 7 Pro review that I did. And I'm going to first send it over to the Tropical, which is my warm SSD solution. So I'm gonna go over to apps and go ahead and click on this, and we'll see how long it takes. So you'll notice down here, this is basically the green bar that you see on Windows. It's just here in macOS. And one thing I've noticed is that it likes to dip up and down a lot. So as you can see here, it had this big push of transferring data, and then it kind of just stopped or died down, and then it's building itself back up. So not really sure why this happens, if it's the adapter, TerraMaster, or just macOS, the frequency of how fast it's updating. But yeah, as you can see here, we're going to see how high it peaks. I just saw 500 there, which is pretty fast if I do say so myself. And I just realized that I transferred this without starting the timer. So let me go ahead and do that again. And stop. So we saw 500 before, and if I do 500, times 8, that's 4,000. And then my theoretical speed of a 5,000 gig card, if I go divide that by 8, it's 625, but with overhead loss, like I said before, 570, 600 would be great. 500 is plenty fast for me. Once I get the 10 gig adapter or card or network that I do, it should be much faster. So took about 47 seconds when it comes to the warm solution. Let's go ahead and go over to the iceberg, the cold solution. It's gonna be slow. These are hard drives, they're archive purposes. I'm not really going to be editing or using data that much on these drives. So I'm okay with it taking a slower process. As long as it gets there and eventually gets uploaded to the cloud, I'm happy. So while this is going on, let me actually hop into the TerraMaster software and talk a little bit more about the things that I like and dislike. So first thing that I dislike is the splash screen. No offense. I think in terms of signing in and things like that, it's pretty straightforward. I also do like how it has two-factor authentication as well. But I mean, this background, we should be able to change this background to whatever we want. So that was the first thing that I did. So once you're logged in, you can actually see the resource manager as well. So if you're curious to see how much data is being transferred within TerraMaster software, you can see that there. I'm just gonna open this up real quick and see if it's almost done. And just like that, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's done. So took about a full 3 extra minutes. It's like 2 minutes, 50 seconds if you wanna be technical. But yeah, once you're in the software, there are some things you should be aware of. First thing, like I said, highly recommend just coming here, clicking your name, going to display, and then changing your background to something other than this. Okay, let's make it orange since it's fall season and talk a little bit more about the storage solution. So once you're in here, if you did the automatic initialization, it actually uses all your disk drives as one big RAID configuration, and it does it in T-RAID, which allows you to mix and match drives. So if you get a bigger drive in the future, you can just add it to your RAID profile. I didn't do that. I have 2 separate T-RAIDs. I have a T-RAID for my hard drives, T-RAID for my SSDs, and then I have a hypercache of one of the NVMe drives that I installed. And if I were to go over to disk here, you'll see that I have my 4 drives, which are in the bay here, and the 2 drives here. This gives you a bit more information. So one of the NVMe's is the system drive. The other one is a hypercache drive, which accelerates the transfer from my computer, or I should say, from the NAS solution to the other drives that are inside of here, because NVMe is crazy fast, and it does support PCIe Gen 4x4. My recommendation is for the system drive, I probably would go for like a 128 gigabyte card instead of using a terabyte. Hindsight's 2020. I really don't see a use of using a 1 terabyte NVMe drive since you can't use it as a hypercache. But once you have your storage pool created, your volumes created, then you can start getting into the fun stuff of a NAS. So as you can see here, my volume 3 is my Arctic, my cold solution, and then my warm solution, the SSDs, is about 2 terabytes. And the other thing that's really nice when it comes to TerraMaster is something called the App Center. And this is what I really like machines for, and it's coming to virtualization. Now, TerraMaster can do this, but the more and more I use it, I don't want to knock the software because I think the software is okay from a virtualization standpoint, but it does have some features that I wish it had that Proxmox does have. But yes, you do have community apps as well. So if you were to click on here, you can actually install various amount of apps. So Jellyfin was one of them, but I have a different configuration that I ended up going with when it comes to Jellyfin. Here's Modbase 1. I'm going to download this here. It's going to save it to my local machine. And then when I go over to TerraMaster, I'll go over to settings. So from here, you can select what drive you want. I want to use the SSD, especially when it comes to virtualization, because I think the hard drives are way too slow. I'm going to go over to download, select the Modbase 1, and it's going to actually install it. And we'll wait for a second here. And then when we go over to installed, this is the other thing I don't dislike. When things are loading, you can't navigate different menus on the interface, but yeah, you're kind of just stuck at this screen until it's done. So one of my recommendations for any of the TerraMaster developers is have a bit more flexibility when it comes to the user interface. It just seems like it's really locked down. Obviously, I can use stuff in the taskbar, but even the taskbar, things just get overlapped. So I would say have things probably be opened up one at a time instead of it being just overlapped all the time. And then if something is being done on the screen, just have the ability for the user to access other settings in their app. But regardless, the app is installed now for Modbase 1. All right, so going over the things I do have installed thus far is the Docker engine, which if you are doing any type of server home lab solution, Docker should be your go-to for things. Modbase 1 is what I just installed. Portainer, which I'll get into in a second, and Tailscale, which is the VPN that I'm using to pretend that I'm at my home address or my IP address at home. And then FFmpeg, which is good for, I mean, pretty much 99% of the things that are going on with the internet when it comes to transcoding and encoding things. It's really the sauce, what goes behind the scenes for a lot of things that you watch on the internet and on TV as well. So hopping into Portainer, here is my TerraMaster, and everything you see here is being ran off this NAS system. So I'm going to hit Live Connect here. And as you can see here, I have 8 containers running. I can verify that by going over to the TerraMaster, going over to terminal here, have it on my desktop. And if I just do Docker container ps-a, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 containers running, matches up with what Portainer is showing. So first thing I have is DrawIO. If you aren't familiar with DrawIO, it's basically like Lucidcharts, but free. And it's basically just architecture, workflow, documentation that you can do. So this is just, you know, like a mock-up of a cloud architecture in AWS. So yeah, I'm hosting that locally on my machine. GitLab, I have another one. I'm just messing around with a few things. GitLab is basically just the open source version of GitHub. Is GitHub open source? I'm not sure. Microsoft owns them, but it's widely used. GitLab is more of the open source solution that I'm just running locally. So here's like a small test here. Jellyfin. So I do have Blu-ray movies that I've ripped, and I probably have a previous video that I showcased before. So if I go into any one of these movies here, so let's just say Dune Part 2, click play. There you go. And this is actually on my hard drives themselves. So if I were to just hop to some random scene and click play, it's there. It's there. It's there. Beautiful. So that's, if you're doing any type of media stuff, trust me, you're gonna want a NAS, because that was like 80 gigs. So I do have a local database that I run as well. This is just like my own local database that I just do testing with when it comes to YouTube for doing like benchmarks and stuff where I'm storing it. And then also my YouTube analytics. I do a whole bunch of calculations in SQL myself and just troubleshooting and just messing around with stuff as well. Metabase is more of just like analytical software that I'm still trying to get up and running. Next on the list is WebUI. And if you're familiar with ChatGPT, WebUI is just utilizing the API token from OpenAI in its own interface. So I can just type in here like, can you calculate the diameter of the sun? And I spelled calculate wrong, but it doesn't really matter. So this doesn't really rely on OpenAI server except for the API, but the API almost never has any problems with it. If ChatGPT gets a lot of traffic, the API always serves me well, and you can actually select whatever model you want. I kind of prefer the pay-as-you-go model instead of just paying 20 bucks a month because I'm not using all 20 bucks a month. I like how it has these icons here, so if I can say like, what should I wear in a rainy weather day? Oh, I have to select my model, my bad. So it's raining, what should I wear? So highly recommend that if you like ChatGPT and you use ChatGPT 4, just use the API token, host this yourself, and it's going to be just as good. And I can do multiple things as well. So I'm just going to go here and just, show me a code snippet, hit play, boom, just like that. All local, by the way. I think this might have stopped actually, so let's keep going. And I'm just gonna stop it there. I think that's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. It has its own interface as well. So for parents, if you don't trust your child with ChatGPT, you can host this yourself, monitor what they do. I could probably make a dedicated video on WebUI, but that's neither here or there. I also have piHole running locally. So as you can see here, this is my piHole. I have 36 clients connected. I have way more when I have my devices in testing that I do. But as you can see here at 9 o'clock, that's where work kind of started. So you can see that more blocking has been going on. And then the last thing I have running is Uptime Kuma, which is basically just looking at my overall servers and services, I should say, to see if they're up and running. As you can see here, I have both Proxmox and NAS. So if I were to go over here and click on Proxmox, this is the Proxmox instance that I have of WebUI. So I'm doing transferring from Proxmox over to here, but I'm getting the feeling I should just stick with Proxmox and mount drives from here over to Proxmox so I don't have a single point of failure. But yeah, this is just a monitoring service that I have. And then HomeAssistant, I don't unfortunately have on the NAS service yet because I don't want to run HomeAssistant as a Docker container. I want it to be the actual HomeAssistant core itself running in a Linux environment. So in terms of virtualization, the TerraMaster can do it. I would highly recommend using Portainer in order to do so. I know some people are gonna be like, hey, I want to actually install Ubuntu, the actual Ubuntu server. You can just install like VirtualBox from the community app and then run it there. Not the greatest because it's like a VM within a VM. When it comes to the first party apps, I would say just use these first if you want to be maintained by TerraMaster, right? If you use Plex, just install Plex here. MB, if you want to do MB, do it there. But personally, I like to have my stuff be maintained by myself, which is why I prefer using something like Portainer. And as you can see here, it tells you all, these are actually the threads. So there's 12 threads, 68 gigabytes of memory. So that's all the virtualization that I'm doing thus far. I do want to run other like Linux distros like Debian, Ubuntu, and stuff like that. But as of now, I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. But kind of going back to the software, if you're really new to NASes, TerraMaster makes it pretty easy. So if I were to click on File Manager here, these are the different volumes that I have. So Tropical are my SSDs, go to Apps, these are the videos. So if I wanted to just drop a random video here, just like that, I can do it within this web interface, just like that, and it's done. If you want to delete something, you can just go ahead and right click it as if it was anything else, hit delete. I don't know if I can actually play the video. Let me go ahead and double click it.
What's going on, guys? So
that was like instant, by the way. It is on SSD, so, not surprised, but dang, I was so energetic on that review. Anyway, yeah, Tropical is the SSD. If I were to hop over to Iceberg, I can do the same thing here. So just looking at the archive, looking at my iPhone 16 day in a life video, it's there. It actually brought it up pretty quick, by the way. So if you don't want to use like your native file manager within macOS, Windows, or Linux, you can just use the interface here. I find this way to be much more reliable. But yeah, very straightforward in terms of setting up users as well. You just go to settings here, click users, boom, boom, boom. You can do that here. Networking kind of tells you what you can name it, stuff like that. Terminal, not the biggest fan of how they handle terminal here in terms of like, you know, allowing stuff. It seems like a very stripped down version of a Linux distro, I should say. But you know, it is what it is. You have virtual disk as well. Hypercache, the one thing you have to note about Hypercache is, for one, the NVMe drive cannot be a storage pool or volume, and it cannot be part of the system drive. If it meets all those three requirements, you can then set them up to work as a caching before it hits your actual drives themselves. But yeah, other than that, in terms of hardware, you can, you know, configure the fan speeds. If I do full speed, hit apply. For full speed, that's pretty quiet. My drives are louder than the fan. But I'm just gonna set it to automatic. You can set UPS support and stuff like that. Wake on LAN, I think that's actually pretty smart. Keep that on. But yeah, deep sleep for hard drives, you can set that there. I'll just set it for default for now. System, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of into the nitty gritty. But overall, in terms of the system, I would say it's pretty good. It's pretty good. As my first NAS, I would say that I was expecting to fall into more confusion than anything else, but TerraMaster made it pretty easy for me to understand things. So my next video, I'm going to be using the Aero Max 7 because this has two 10 gig ports on it. And then I have a 10 gig switch with some, almost did a Linus there. And then I have some SFP adapters as well. I think this is probably the cheapest way I could do it if I want to have like the most amount of 10 gig ports coming from my router. But hopefully you guys enjoyed my first impressions of the TerraMaster F4-424 Max. Once again, this is my first NAS solution. I'm not a NAS expert by any means. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this of like home server stuff, of just more non-smartphone stuff, just more like technical stuff, please let me know down in the comments below. I'll try to explain it in the simplest way I can. And as always, guys, much love.